Welcome to Stocks in Translation, our essential conversation cutting through the market mayhem, the noisy numbers, and the hyperbole to give you the information you need to make the right trade for your portfolio. Today, I'm joined as always by Sydney Freed on your camera right, and also Phil Rosen is joining us. He is a financial news professional just like us and co-founder and editor of the Opening Bell Daily. On the docket today, we're going to be talking about shifting narratives. They're always shifting, right? Well, we've got the AI trade and chip stocks. They are tumbling, but like magic, small caps are coming back and large cap financials, healthcare, and industrials are at record highs right now. By the way, our phrase of the day, the Trump trade. We're hearing it a lot, but what exactly does it even mean? Well, it's got crypto now. And this episode brought to you by the number 2.4 trillion. That would be dollars, and that is a total market capitalization of the crypto market, what a Trump presidency might mean for crypto aficionados. Now, Sydney, Phil, let's get to the main point here. We got to talk about this titanic shift in the market. It happened last week. I was reading something you recently wrote, Phil, about small caps and how they've just erupted. 92% of the gains this year were made in the last week. They just came alive.
It is pretty crazy. I was making the chart for that. And I was it was essentially a vertical chart in the last, centimeter of the chart from, I think, July 9th.
Good hockey stick.
Yeah, we saw the rotation on July 9th, and a lot of the big tech stocks are down, NVIDIA, Microsoft. And this has been dubbed by a lot of people as the Trump trade because as Trump is getting increasingly priced into the market, his victory in the White House, I think that bodes well for small caps, and I think.
Well, let's talk about the Trump trade right now. This is our phrase of the day, and we're going to break it down. I canvassed the internet first of all of the internet. Didn't really find
the whole internet.
It took a solid 5 minutes. Didn't find the definition I was looking for. And Wall Street seems to think that the Trump trade is a basket of stocks or sectors that are going to do well or do poorly under Trump. But keep in mind, all those predictions in 2016, those were pretty much mostly terrible. Energy actually did pretty badly, and that's traditional energy, while alternative energy soared. So we also saw steel companies, with all the tariffs and everything, all the protection talk, the steel companies didn't do that well under Trump. So I like the way a Bankrate article described this Trump trade as shifts in market behavior. So here's the definition I'm looking at. The Trump trade describes how market behaviors shift in reaction to how investors perceive another Trump term will impact markets, taking into consideration Trump's current rhetoric and prior action as President of the United States with respect to trade, taxes, deregulation, infrastructure, and crypto. So Phil, I'll pose it to you, like as a financial journalist, what is it like trying to figure out what Trump's next move is going to be? I remember going through this exercise a number of years ago.
So the most obvious thing I think that I've been covering is the crypto market response to Trump's increasing election odds or election victory odds. I think Bitcoin is up 13% in the last week. ETH is something similar to that. And you have a lot of meme coins that are tied to Trump or MAGA that are also going up right now. And a lot of that, I believe, stems from Trump's stance on crypto. He's come out as very crypto friendly, and he just picked JD Vance as his running mate, who is also known as a crypto friendly guy. So you have a lot of these perma-bull crypto people that are...
they're hodlers, so they're always perma-bulls, which I understand. But I mean, to your point, they're excited about, because there's been this incredible crypto diaspora. And Sydney, I can tell you've got a burning question.
Well, I was going to say, was Trump always a proponent for crypto?
No.
When did this shift kind of happen?
I mean, this was the last week or two, right?
Pretty recent. I mean, there's a lot of folks saying that it's purely political to capture a new voting demographic of people that are only voting for whoever's going to be more pro-crypto. And I think he's really come out strong with it, and there hasn't been the same response from the Biden camp, I don't believe. I think Polymarket showed 70% odds for a Trump victory, and that's gone up a lot in the last week. and crypto has responded in kind.
Well, let's talk. Did you have something?
Well, I was going to say, who did journalists come up with this idea of the Trump trade, or was this a Wall Street analyst? Where did this come from? And did we come up with it last week?
It's alliteration, so I imagine journalists did it. But I don't. Do you
Floating
remember?
in the ether, I don't know.
Yeah.
I read it in, I think, the Journal. Probably Barron's had it.
I mean,
I wrote about it.
Rick Newman was writing articles for us about the Trump trade in 2015. So I know it goes back quite a ways to the original. But you mentioned Biden, and with Biden and Gary Gensler, the crypto people coming into the Biden presidency thought, okay, we got a glimmer of hope. At least Gary Gensler knows about crypto. He taught this blockchain course at MIT. But he was not crypto friendly in the end. And in fact, I mean, he stomped all over the crypto market. What was your experience reporting this?
I know that a lot of crypto sources I've interviewed are not fans of Gary Gensler. And when I was first starting as a reporter, that actually surprised me quite a bit because I remember watching his YouTube lectures about blockchain when he was still a professor.
He's a smart guy.
Yeah,
he's very knowledgeable.
He knows his stuff. But obviously in regulation, he has not really been so generous with the crypto folks. And he's really had to, I think, walk back a lot of his statements. And we have the launch of the ETH ETF, I think soon, probably imminently.
The Ether ETFs.
Yep.
I think those come next Tuesday, if I'm not mistaken. And we, and let's talk about that for a second. We saw a huge bump up with the spot Bitcoin ETFs. Are you seeing the same enthusiasm in the crypto market for the new Ether ones?
I'm not super sure. I would guess it's going to be a smaller reaction than what we saw with the Bitcoin ETFs. Part of that, I think it's perhaps a less popular investment, but also we saw how Bitcoin reacted a few months ago to the launch of the ETFs, and maybe people are forecasting, a similar move, or they don't want to get involved because they didn't think the last move was big enough. There's a lot of ways you can slice it.
Phil, let me ask you, how much does a president, going back to the Trump trade, how much does a president actually matter to the stock market? It feels like it's like gaining ground right now. At least I feel like I didn't hear it spoken about like this 4 years ago or 8 years ago.
So I think if you zoom out a lot, it doesn't matter too much. Stocks have pretty much been going up forever, no matter who's in office.
Stocks do go up. That is what they tend to do.
So the short answer, I think, is no, it won't matter. But in the near term, I think there are ways that investors are positioning for a Trump White House. Something that Trump is known for is he wants less regulation, and that can be seen as a pretty bullish thing for stocks, especially small caps. And
financials.
Financials, crypto. So I think that falls into the Trump trade is just based on his desire to deregulate a lot of different things.
Yeah.
What do you observe from, past presidents?
Yeah, I think, I agree with you. Stocks go up, and for the most part, it's not supposed to matter what the president does. However, Trump really hung his hat on where the Dow was during his presidency. He would quote the stock market all the time. I would say Trump really elevated the importance of the president with respect to the market to a degree that we hadn't seen in a while or maybe ever. But I saw that continue into the Biden years, and maybe it's just the case that it always seems this way. It always seems like the president is important. And I'll say this too, given that stocks tend to go up, it's not the same stocks all the time. So we're always trying to pick winners and potential losers, even though, we're in this bull market. And it could be a totally different set of stocks that do well under Trump as would do well under Biden. And so I think that's what people are trying to tease out here. But I go back to, putting my hat on it. Everybody was wrong about, 2016, 2020, what was going to happen under Trump, what was going to happen under Biden. It just got it so wrong that I, take it with a grain of salt.
Yeah.
That's what I would say.
I have a follow question for you, Phil, as a markets reporter. So I'm wondering sometimes how in your newsletter or in your reporting, you decide that something is moving markets. So for example, over the weekend, we obviously saw the attempted assassination of former President Donald Trump. And then on Monday, we saw stock futures pre-market were a little higher, and people were kind of divided about whether that incident and the results had anything to do with where futures were, or if it was just the earnings that people were anticipating for the week.
There's a lot to unpack there.
That's a
well,
loaded
it's just like
question.
as a reporter, how do you kind of balance and
Yeah.
figure it out?
I don't know that you ever can with certain things.
Yeah, with the market, it's really the market will do what it does, and it's pretty hard to assign a cause and effect, I think, generally. But this weekend shooting, stocks did kind of rip on Monday morning, and that from the people I was speaking to and sort of the things I was reading, that stemmed from the odds of Trump's victory going up.
And the reaction in Bitcoin was undeniable. I mean, we saw that right away. So sometimes it is obvious when an event affects markets, but then there are other days when there's not a lot of volatility. And I'll ask you this: there's not a lot of volatility, so you just kind of say, well, maybe it was this report that dropped at 8:30 a.m. How do you manage that kind of stuff?
Yeah, it's honestly a lot of it is just getting on the phone and just asking really smart people what they're watching. You call people at different banks or different strategists, economists, and ask them, hey, like, what are you looking at in the market today? Or what do you think this stock is doing? Is it tied to this? So that's a lot of my day job is of course making these phone calls. I think generally this weekend, the cause and effect was pretty clear.
All right, we need to take a short break here, but coming up, we're going to be talking more crypto, and we're going to find out who's wearing the race to new highs better on an all-new Who Wore It Better, coming up. All right, we are back, and guess what? This episode is brought to you by the number 2.4 trillion, and that is in dollars. That's the current size of the entire crypto market. It's been as high as 3 trillion, but the 2.4 is impressive since it's nearly exactly twice the size of 1 year ago. So the crypto market has doubled over the last year. And let's remember for a second that crypto was all but left for dead because of the FTX bankruptcy in 2022. The Biden-Gensler dynamic was a huge disappointment. We were just talking about that. So is that going to change under Trump, or is this just more pandering to a loyal base? That's kind of what we're talking about here. And this ties in with our previous discussion. But the crypto people, I think, have been clamoring for a leader, somebody, a political figure who would protect them, their interests for such a long time. I think it was just an easy grab, but I don't actually understand why Biden didn't do this. Why other candidates haven't just gone for the crypto vote. It's not that hard. All you got to do is support crypto, and maybe there's a conflict there. But what do you think?
So I think one thing that's not super talked about is that Trump has come out and said he doesn't want central bank digital currencies.
That's a big one.
Yeah, so that's kind of the antithesis of Bitcoin or cryptocurrencies. So that has been something I think that is getting priced in to crypto markets. And so it's maybe part of it is, of course, he's enthusiastic for crypto and Bitcoin, but that he's not supporting the central bank.
Because there's a lot embedded in a central bank digital currency, and there are legitimate fears because China has plowed ahead, and I think they were the first on Earth to do this. But the digital currency can be tracked, so it's kind of the opposite of Bitcoin if you think about it. And this also raises the issue that DeFi, the decentralized finance, isn't really so decentralized anymore. I'm just wondering what kind of reporting you've done along these lines and what you're seeing the dynamics, how they play out.
Yeah, I think one of the big risks that's most talked about with central bank digital currencies is the surveillance potential. So, if you're spending a lot on a certain thing that maybe the government deems it doesn't like you spending on, it can pull back maybe your credit limits or your spending limits, and that's something that
sounds very Orwellian. And that's what the Chinese have done.
Yeah, and it's super opposite to Bitcoin or other cryptocurrencies that are decentralized, and there's really no rules, and you can spend as you like or store them as you like. So I would say that's a huge talking point right now.
So if Trump does win re-election and he's being known right now as crypto-friendly, does that mean we're automatically going to get some crypto-friendly regulators in the FTC? What kind of happens there?
That is a good question. I don't know. I mean, I don't think Trump is super pro Gary Gensler.
I expect, because the commissioners, I can tell you the way the commissions at the SEC, that's Securities and Exchange Commission, and the CFTC, that's Commodity Futures Trading Commission, they work. They're political. So I think there are 5 members, so you're guaranteed not a split vote. You have a chair, and that's Gary Gensler at the SEC. Embarrassingly, I don't know who's heading the CFTC right now, but the CFTC has been a lot more crypto friendly than the SEC over the Biden administration. And the CFTC was actually looking to greenlight some, what I think were potentially some scary things with respect to the futures market based on the FTX model. Guess what? FTX failed, and then that went out the window. But yeah, I think we'll get some more politically crypto-leaning people in those chairs, and I would expect the SEC to be a lot more crypto-friendly if Donald Trump fulfills his promises.
Well, I think JD Vance already is circulating some draft legislation about some sort of either easing crypto regulation or I'm not sure exactly what's in it, but I know he's already been doing that before he was announced as VP. And I think he owns, or it was reported that he owns over 100K in Bitcoin.
Yes,
which
I saw that. That's a lot.
Yeah,
I mean, for a politician.
Yeah.
Well, especially on Twitter, that's eaten up by crypto buyers.
Yeah.
On the opposite end, if Biden wins re-election, what can we kind of expect? Is crypto just gonna crash because it's not Trump, or is Biden just gonna become more crypto friendly because he has to after seeing, what Trump has done?
Biden has been so priced out of
It almost
winning.
doesn't matter, maybe.
Yeah, I think so. The upswing in crypto that we've seen in the last week has come from those election odds,
Right.
Or a big chunk of it, and I don't know if it's even a question in the market right now on whether Trump is going to win.
So I'd add, when there's not a question, then if it actually happens, you see a big price reaction. So I would expect a big price reaction to the downside. I want to get into your career here. You had a paying job in April of this year. You decided, I'm going to quit the job. I'm going to join up with Anthony Pompliano, and you started your own morning newsletter, your own business. And tell us what that was like for you. You're a young guy. You didn't have a lot of financial experience, but here you go.
Yeah, so just to clarify, I don't have any finance background. I'm self-taught journalist. And,
Me too.
Most journalists, I think, in finance are self-taught in finance. So I was covering markets and investing at Business Insider for almost 3 years. And that was great. I learned a ton. But it was time to, I think, build something new and team up with Pomp, who's a great partner. And what we are trying to solve for right now, let me start with this. When I was at Business Insider, I would write a lot of stories, and then my colleagues, of course, would write a lot of stories. And a lot of my friends would text me and say, "Hey, can you send me screenshots of these stories because I can't read them because of the paywall?" And I would oblige most often. And
we won't tell Business Insider.
Yeah. And but after a long enough time of doing that, we believe that there's a way to deliver this information without a paywall, and that's important because we are living in one of the most interesting and dynamic financial cycles of our lifetimes. Yes. So getting this information in people's hands, in their inbox, is important. And doing that, I think the people that can least afford a paywall or are the least willing to pay for a paywall, those are some of the people that need it the most. Yeah, and it's important information. So I think it's a great problem that we're trying to solve.
Yeah, access is very important. I agree. So we're all kind of in this business. There's a lot of bad or misleading information out there. There's so many media outlets. Obviously a lot of good ones, and then a lot of individual actors, even with the growth of social media and people kind of claiming to have a lot of financial news experience on TikTok. How do you kind of weed out the information that you don't want to listen to and the information you do want to use?
Signal noise problem.
Yeah, so the easiest answer, a lot of that's just reps. Like I've written thousands of markets articles and newsletters over the years.
3 years at BI, I can guarantee, thousands sounds about right.
Thousands of articles, and you're working with great editors, great reporters, and everyone around you kind of gives you those guardrails, sort of like a bowling alley. You have the rails on the side, and they'll kind of guide you on what's right and what's not. But another piece of that, reading widely is the antidote to misinformation, because I start my day, I pretty much read the FT, the Wall Street Journal, Barron's, Bloomberg.
You got to say Yahoo Finance.
Finance, of course. I read a ton of newsletters. So I'm getting almost every source you can think of. And then if you kind of fall somewhere in the middle of all of those sources, or you make a call based on your own view, I think, the view comes from getting all those sources at once.
Great aspect there. How do you ventured out on your own? What was the decision process for you? I imagine you had a strong compulsion, because for me to leave a well-paying job, where I was doing something I loved, the opportunity would have to be that much better. What was the kind of like the internal discussion in your head?
Yeah, I think a piece of it is that I've always been very entrepreneurial. So I've always had my own projects going on, even when I had full-time jobs. So, I keep a blog, I write books on the side, I do a lot of podcasts, like everything that's outside of my actual 9 to 5, whatever that's been, I've always had those things juggling, and I host a lot of events. So I always have things going on. And I think it got to the point where I wanted to figure out how to make my 9 to 5 one of those big projects I was working on, instead of it being my 9 to 5.
That's nice.
I want to ask you, you organize meetings. These are meetup meetings for journalists, and I just became aware of them. I'm excited now. I want to go to the next one.
Come along.
But tell us what these are. Why did you organize them in the first place, and what are they?
So I founded a group called Journalist Club, and we do 3 to 4 dinners a month of journalists from all different media outlets. I think we've had an attendee from every single major news outlet now, and I've hosted probably 200 reporters at this point at these events. And early on this year, we were seeing a lot of layoffs in media, and that pushed me. I was like, okay, we should probably figure out a way to know people in other newsrooms, and there wasn't really a mechanism to do that unless you're reaching out cold to people. So I started hosting these events, and a lot of people were showing up. And now I know a lot of people in a lot of other newsrooms, and I think the people that have attended the events also know a lot of people in other newsrooms now. All
right, we got to close the show with a segment we like to call Who Wore It Better? And with so much talk about market concentration, we thought we'd balance the conversation by highlighting some of the pockets of strength that have emerged this year outside of the AI chip trade. So within the last week, we've seen 3 sectors, financials, industrials, and healthcare, all rocket to fresh record highs. And we're not necessarily looking in the rear view mirror here. We want to know which sector you think is poised the best for the future, given all that we know. And there are no wrong answers.
I think it's got to be financials. It's the deregulation.
The Trump trade.
Yeah, deregulation play.
Glad that we always come back to that.
I want to close with one more personal question. What is it like to craft a newsletter every day with the events and kind of hone in on this very top headlines and kind of pick between everything that we hear in the market?
Yeah, that's a great question. I mean, one super shortcut to know what the biggest story of the day is to look at all the homepages of every financial press.
Yahoo Finance.
Yep. So whatever all the big outlets are saying, somewhere along those lines, you'll find the biggest story. And for me, it's really a practice of, it's like getting on the phones every morning and reading a ton of information and then distilling all of it into a 5-minute read that is conversational and something that my mom can understand, and trying to give the best information possible.
All right, Phil, we got to leave it there. Really appreciate you stopping by here. Sydney, as always, and Phil, might see you Thursday at that CMT event. All right, that'll do it all for Stocks in Translation. Keep your dial tuned to Yahoo Finance.